Welcome back to r/Neighbors from Hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled Karen Declares War on My Parents for Cutting a Tree Down on Their Own Property. I, 25 male, have been living away from home ever since graduating from college. My parents both retired recently, and last summer they decided to use some of the money they had saved up to finally build their dream retirement home in New Orleans, where they've been living for the past 10 years. I come from a very tight-knit family, so I still talk to my parents every week, and they were so excited when they said that they had already picked out the location where they wanted the house built. It was an empty lot in a nice neighborhood where a house had been demolished not long before due to age, and the previous owner, who was pretty wealthy and owned numerous properties around the city, decided that the lot was worth more without the house on it. Anyway, my parents snapped it up as soon as it came on the market, but not long after construction began, they realized that they were building their dream house right next door to the lair of a wild Karen. The trouble started when my parents had to cut down a large oak tree that sat in the front of the lot. It was a real beauty too, one of those big southern live oaks, and although they didn't want to, they knew they had to remove it because it was in the way. No one likes to cut down a big beautiful tree, and believe me, if there was a way to avoid doing it without impeding the construction, my parents would have taken it. So they called a tree removal service, and the tree was soon gone. Well, a few days after the tree had been cut down, my dad was on the property talking to some of the construction guys and making sure everything was going smoothly. He was going back to his car when he saw a woman in her late 50s walk out of the house next door and head to her mailbox. My dad, let's call him John, is a pretty chill and laid-back guy who likes to be on good terms with everyone, so he walked over and introduced himself. "Hi," he said, holding out his hand. "My name is John, and my wife and I are going to be your neighbors once our house is finished. I just wanted to come over and say hi and introduce myself. It's nice to meet you. What is your name?" Karen glanced at the extended hand and then looked up at my dad and glared at him.
"My name is none of your business," she snapped. "I'm not going to shake your hand because of the virus, and even if there was no virus, I still wouldn't shake your hand. Because you people ruined my life when you cut down my tree. I still cannot believe how selfish you are. You should both be ashamed of yourselves."
My dad was taken aback by this and pointed out that Karen already had a nice big oak tree in her backyard, but Karen ignored him and stalked back inside her house. She never explained why she thought she was the owner of the tree that had been cut down, not once, and whenever my parents asked about it, she refused to answer. I guess it is just one of those things we will never know, like what really happened to the lost Roanoke colony or the fate of D.B. Cooper. And well guys, I would say if you are curious about what happened in Roanoke, you should take a look at American Horror Story, which I would highly recommend unless you don't really like horror TV shows. Anyway, my parents met some of their other neighbors later that day, including a nice elderly couple who lived in the other house next door, Karen's, and when my dad told them what happened, the neighbors said Karen was like that to everyone and no one in the neighborhood liked her. They also said that Karen had been nasty to them for a long time and they were in the process of selling their house because they couldn't stand living next door to her anymore. Karen soon began living up to her reputation. For months, whenever my parents would visit the house to see how the construction was coming along, she would find something to complain or confront them about. One time she said the construction workers were being too loud and threatened to call the police even though it was the middle of the day. Another time she said that the construction company was using illegal immigrants as cheap labor and threatened to call ICE and have the whole project shut down. My dad mentioned this to the owner of the company and the owner sent Karen a formal letter threatening a lawsuit if she tried. I don't know if there were any actual grounds for a lawsuit, but the threat must have worked because ICE never showed up. Oh, and then there was the time she tried to have my parents' car towed for illegal parking when they parked by the curb of their still unfinished house. The first my parents knew about this was when the tow truck showed up, but the driver took one look at where my parents' car was parked and told Karen he would send her a bill for wasting his time if she called him again. I could go on and on and on. Karen did everything she could think of to try and interfere. She was absolutely relentless in her crusade to avenge a tree she never even owned. Happily, the house was completed despite her best efforts, and my parents finally moved in not long after the holidays. My mom told me later that she caught Karen watching them bitterly from her window as they were taking some of their boxes inside. She was concerned that Karen might keep going and try something else, but I guess Karen was too busy wallowing in self-pity over her failure or something, because things were actually quiet for a while. But a few weeks ago, things changed. New Orleans has had some really bad weather lately due to the winter storms that are battering much of the southern US right now, and one night one of those storms was so powerful that it knocked over the tree in Karen's backyard. It missed falling onto her house, but it didn't miss falling onto her shiny new Jaguar and crushing it like a beer can. According to my folks, Karen did not discover what happened until the following morning. When she came outside and saw the pile of scrap metal that used to be her car, she threw back her head and let out a primal scream like something out of The Exorcist. She had to pay a tree removal service to get rid of the tree, and then she had to pay for a tow truck to get rid of the car too, and then she had to get a rental car as well. Karen put her property up for sale and moved out not long afterwards. Everyone in the neighborhood was glad to see her go, and my parents enjoyed watching her drive off into the sunset from the front porch of their amazing new house. Added for clarification, Karen did not sell her house right away. She put it on the market and moved out of it as soon as she could. I don't know where she is now, but I'm guessing she is staying somewhere else while she waits for someone to buy the property. I don't know if anyone has bought it yet, but since there is a pandemic going on, I think she will be waiting for some time. And by the way guys, while we are at the topic of moving and so on, in case some of you remember, I moved to Bangkok a few weeks ago, and so far I have to say I am really pleasantly surprised. I have been to Bangkok numerous times so far, but only always for a few days just for holidays, but now when you actually live here, it does not feel as hot as I remembered. Also, the selection of cheap restaurants around where I live is just absolutely amazing. However, as you might also remember, I had the idea to maybe buy something like a GoPro or some kind of camera to put on my motorcycle to get some footage for the background videos. However, I have to admit I will probably do that a few months into the future, because I first have to get used to all the roads around here, because the traffic can definitely be a little bit confusing. And the next one is titled Absolutely Mr. Neighbor. I have a neighbor who is a bit of a troublemaker. A bit of a backstory: he has 4 cars and often parks them all on the street, completely filling the street in front of his and my house. When he is not working on his car with air wrenches or washing them, he is probably idling his tow truck, and oh yeah, he has a tow truck too, just rumbling away outside of my house. People are constantly coming and going from his house, likely for illicit reasons, but no way to prove that. There was a period where the police were at his house multiple times a week about 2 years ago, but that has subsided to once every couple of months. He lives with his grandma, who is immobile, and you no longer see her anymore except when the ambulance comes and takes her to the hospital alone. Last week, when I was walking out of my house to take my son to daycare, he came stomping across the street and started to be all buddy-buddy with me, so I immediately knew something was up. He asked if we can keep my dog, a German Shepherd, inside in the morning until 7 AM because he is tired of her waking him up. She is a shepherd, she barks, we limit it as best as we can, but a dog is going to be a dog. I say sure and continue buckling in my kit. He then continues on and says to not take pictures of him or his house. I point to the camera overhead, which is oriented in a way to see my front door, driveway and his house. I put it up to keep an eye on him and my property since he has a hothead and I don't trust him to not do something stupid. Then to take the cake, he told me to stop following his wife and explained that she said I followed her home multiple times. I explained to him that I lived across the street, from time to time we will both be coming home at the same time and that I have better things to do than park a mile away from home to follow her home. So, for the malicious compliance, it comes back to keeping my dog inside until 7 AM so he can get his much needed beauty sleep. Now, instead of leaving her dog door unlocked at night and her going out in the morning when she wakes up, usually around when we wake up at 6:30 AM, we lock it at night and unlock it on the nose at 7 AM. But at 7 AM when I let her out, I tell her to speak for about 5 minutes. More often than not, she would go out in the morning, pee and come back in with no any the wiser. Not anymore though, now she goes out and barks up a storm for a few minutes. Edit: for future readers who still think my neighbor is a saint, the cops were called on him yesterday for threatening to run over the kids who play basketball in the street because their ball rolls on his yard sometimes. Yeah guys, and I would definitely disagree with the neighbor being a saint. I'm not sure how anyone got that impression at first. Anyway, obviously if you watch my videos you must be a saint, and therefore I would be really happy if you could give me some star emojis in the comments and maybe even like the video if you enjoy my content. Thank you so much in advance, it really helps me tremendously. And the next one is titled Neighbor Throws Food from Second Story Window. A few years ago I lived on the second floor of an apartment building that only had 4 units. 2 on the top floor and 2 on the bottom floor. My next door neighbor and I had both gotten puppies around the same time, and so we both started using the surrounding grassy area to take our dogs out. Every tenant had dogs, so everyone used the same grassy area. One day I noticed a pile of cooked ramen noodles on the grass right next to the building and hardly stopped my curious puppy from eating what he had found. A few days later the ramen was still there, but now there was a single dead rose and what looked like some bread as well. I looked up the side of the building and noticed a fresh rose sitting in the window on the second floor. The window lines up directly with the growing pile, and because our apartments mirror each other, I know that window was my neighbor's kitchen window. So now I am almost certain that the next door neighbor is just tossing food scraps out the kitchen window as if we live in a giant composting bin. At this point I am annoyed because I didn't want to have to rush to the vet because my puppy ate a chicken bone or something from the growing food pile, but also who the F throws food out of the window like that? So I did the first thing that came to my mind. I used the dog poop bags I had on me to scoop up a handful of noodles and then dropped the noodles, no bag, directly on my neighbor's doorstep. Never saw any more food out there. And the next one is titled, Am I the a-hole for not giving my neighbors back their dog after they left him with me? So, 3 days ago, mine 22 male neighbors rang on my doorbell to talk. Odd, since it usually never happens, it as the wife asking me if I would dog sit for them while they went to visit someone. I don't know where, presumably out of town. It was supposed to last 2 days and they know I have a dog, so thought I would agree. I did not agree. Recently fireworks and firecrackers have been driving my dog up the wall. She's an 11-year-old granny lab and was completely out of it while the festivities were taking place. Refusing to leave my side, panicking in the middle of the night, flinching at the slightest noise, etc. It got worse when the earthquakes hit Croatia. She full on started howling when the biggest one hit. As a result of all this, she sticks to my side as long as I am home and has gotten moody with everyone else, dogs included. No strangers are allowed near her. I even walk her only shortly outside the building because she keeps rushing back inside, scared of the firecrackers. When I said no, the woman said, "Alright, fine," then went back into her apartment. The morning after, I get outside my apartment to walk my dog and find theirs leashed to the doorknob of my apartment. The 2 dogs got into a barking match instantly and I had to postpone walking mine until I read the note from theirs. It was to tell me to walk her 3 times and that she doesn't eat chicken. I took the dog to the vet prompto and told him it was a stray. Whoop-de-da, no chip. And I have a friend, 23 male, who's been looking for a dog for a month month now. This was a good fit, 8 months old, so still a puppy-adult mix and easy to train. It is a mutt of some kind, but that doesn't matter to my friend who took her in immediately. The family was outraged upon returning, threatening to call the cops. I said to go ahead, they didn't since they know there's no documentation for their dog, which probably means no shots either, my friend's taking care of that. They screamed about how I broke their daughter's heart and to give the dog back, even offering to pay. I told them to piss off. Honestly, they left their dog with a man they barely know, even after he said not to, not even leaving me the food for her. I really lack any sympathy for negligence and incompetence when it comes to raising pets and children, so it is possible I am being too harsh. Normally, whenever one of my parents tries defending something they did, they end up in tears, so I know I can get too cruel when someone decides to poke that particular rash I have. So Ripe Stars, I'm curious, what do you think? Is OP the a-hole in this situation or not? Let us know in the comments. Either way, a person in the comments said, not the a-hole, the dog could have gotten loose, and what if you had left in the middle of the night and not come home? Not your responsibility, but you did the right thing. And someone else said, not the a-hole, they tied their dog to someone's and basically abandoned it. They should not own a pet rock and they broke their daughter's heart. And another one said, not basically, don't qualify their behavior, they abandoned their dog. That is illegal and cruel and just low class. Not the a-hole OP, and I'm so happy the dog has a good home. And the last one is a little bonus story about a horrible landlord posted by user Merlot on our own subreddit r/ripestories. So you asked on today's video if anyone had any horrid landlords. The hubby and I had one that was truly awful. When we moved, it was a rush move, so we took the first place that looked decent. It wasn't our first choice, but to my regret, it was the last choice. The landlady hated us from the first month we were there. I have no idea why. We have had a lot of military moves and nearly everyone said we were the model tenants. The ones that didn't, well, you could tell that they were trying to keep our deposit. But we had dealt with no one like her before. She blamed us for everything that went wrong, including the tenants in the building behind ours, which we had no contact with. One of them took off during the night without paying rent, and she wanted us to pay it since
we knew them.
We had dealt with them once. They came around to get some cigarettes, but we didn't smoke and they went on their way. Too many other things to mention, but she decided that no one in our building, a duplex or the 4 apartments in the building behind us would be allowed air conditioning. It was too expensive was her excuse, but we all paid our utility bills, so no idea where she came up with that. She adored our next door neighbor, so when he repaired his air conditioner, she had broken them, she came screaming at us for it. We invited her into our oven and then told her to go next door, and guess what? They had AC and we didn't. She complained about our phone line on the outside of the building, which we didn't install. She complained about our cable lines, again, which we didn't install, and when our neighbor put a dish up, she screamed at us for that. We invited her to send someone up into the attic to see where the dish went to, but nope, she never checked. We finally left and she was surprised that we were going. She tried charging us with everything up to and including the cheap carpet she had installed. She tried saying it was not cleaned, but we gave her a copy of the invoice and politely referred her to the cleaning company. She said our house was not cleaned, same thing, invoice, and referred her to the cleaning company. More happened, but we ended up getting only half our deposit back, but at that point we were too exhausted to fight her. The best part was that we found out later that the neighbor she so loved skipped out when she was on vacation, and she lost not only the rent but the back rent he kept telling her he would pay her. Both units stayed vacant for about 6 months, and I have no idea how she talked someone into renting there. Karma did hit her in the end. The owner had gotten adjustable mortgages for both properties, and when the bubble burst he ended up losing both of them, and she had to find a new place to live in a hurry. I hope she ended up with a landlord just like her. And guys, unfortunately we have already reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you haven't already, please also go to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where I upload exclusive Reddit videos starting at just $3 a month. This is a great way to support me in case you are interested, and the chance for me to become independent from YouTube revenue. Thank you so much for watching, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.